welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'm gonna be sharing with you a list of 20 books coming out in 2020. Alright, so I put together this list that has 20 books in it. These are all 2020 releases for the first half of the year. I only have books that come out until May. I believe that's the last month I have. Everything else after that, I don't have anything here. So later in the year, if there's things coming out interesting in the second half of the year, maybe I'll do a follow-up to this video, maybe not, we'll see. So these are 20 books. I don't have interest in reading necessarily all these 20. There's a few that I want to read, and others are here just because they're by famous authors or authors that I know you guys enjoy reading. So I thought about putting them here so you get to know that new books are coming out from them. So without further ado, let's get started, and I'll put pictures here for the covers as well as the release date so you all can know and go to Goodreads and add them to your wish lists if you wish to do so. In January, on the 7th of January, it's coming out Mr. Nobody by Catherine Steadman. Catherine was the author of Something in the Water, a book that I read this year and I really enjoyed, so I'm looking forward to read this one. All these descriptions, synopses, come from Goodreads, as you can imagine, and some of them I took directly what it says there, others I read the whole thing and shortened them for you. So on this one it says, a psychiatrist treating a man with no memory discovers that her patient knows far more about her past than his own, in a gripping psychological thriller from the author of Something in the Water. Looking forward to read this one. Still on the same day, 7th of January, it's coming out One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. This is the third book of this author and it's the sequel to One of Us is Lying. Happens 1 year later after the incidents of the first book, and someone started playing a game of truth or dare. Choosing the truth might reveal your darkest secret, but choosing the dare might be really dangerous, even deadly. Still on the same day, every other weekend, one boy whose brother died, the mom is depressed, his other brother is a bully, and his father walked away, and a girl from another family that has divorced parents that use her as a pawn in their own fights. They are forced to spend every other weekend in the same apartment building, and the boy who thinks that forgiveness makes him weak and the girl who thinks love is for fools begin an unlikely friendship. Interesting. I don't know this author and I'm basing this one just on the description. I thought it sounded good and I'm quite curious to read it. Then at the end of January, on the 28th, The Other People by C.J. Tudor. This is the author of The Chalk Man and the other one that came out this year, I believe, that I haven't read it yet. And this one is about a guy, Gabe, who 3 years ago saw his daughter being taken. He was driving behind the car and saw her disappear. However, for some reason, no one believes him. And for a long time, people also believed he was responsible for this. Although people also say that his wife and kids are dead. So it's a bit of a mystery around here. Synopsis doesn't give much away. So it's this. Then in February, there's two books to come out on the 4th, right in the beginning of February. The first one is Snug, a collection of comics about dating your best friend. This is by Katana Chetwin. I don't know how to read her last name, but it's a second book from this girl. She has an Instagram page where she posts comics about her and her boyfriend and the things that they do, and everything is super relatable. Their first book came out, I think, in 2017. It's basically one of those books that only has the comics that they publish on Instagram, so it's a bit pointless. I actually ended up buying that book because I really like their Instagram account and I wanted to support them, so I bought their book. And now next year is coming out with a new one, more comics about a relationship and all that, and love and cute, and it's really adorable. The first one was really adorable, and if you don't follow this Instagram account, go have a look. I'll leave the handle here. I think it's just Katana Comics. I'll leave the correct version here so you can have a look by yourself and see how adorable everything is. Still on the same day, on the 4th of February, we have The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. This one is a young adult about a 17-year-old boy who's really famous in social media. He has over 500,000 of followers. He does some kind of journalism, I don't know. And then his dad get a job with NASA, so they move from Brooklyn to Houston, and he has to restart his life. And there he meets another astro kid, so I assume another kid that also has the parents working for NASA in this astrophysics thing. And the two of them start falling in love. So, diverse young adult book. Then on the 6th of February, it's coming out Heartstopper Volume 3. As the name shows you, this is the third book in the series of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. It's a graphic novel about Charlie and Nick. In this volume, they will go to Paris and they also start telling more people about their relationship as well as discovering more things about each other. These graphic novels are very, very cute. It just makes your heart feel well and it's just so nice and warm. If you haven't read them, have a look as well. They're really nice. They are drawn by Alice herself and everything is adorable about this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go have a look. Now, moving on to March. March will be the month where all the famous authors are publishing more books. And I was really excited to see some of these books by some of these authors here in the list. They're all coming up in March. And it's really a month I'm looking forward to read lots of these books. So on the 3rd, we have 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. It's a psychological suspense and a thriller made for the fans of the genre, in the way that it's a story of a bookseller who finds himself drawn into an FBI investigation for murder. Has a few years ago, he compiled the list of the best homicides that ever happened, the most unlikely to ever be solved, and now there's this mystery killer who's following that list that he creates and doing those murders again. So the FBI contacts the bookseller and is asking him for help to resolve this. So it's basically what happens in the books brought into real life, except it's a book. Seems very interesting. I'm very curious to read this. On the 3rd as well, we have You Are Not Alone, the 3rd book by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This one, the description, the synopsis on Goodreads is so vague. It doesn't say anything, but basically it's the story of one girl and then 2 sisters. The one girl thinks she wants a life like the 2 sisters, but in reality everyone wants a life like hers, like the one girl. I have no clue. It doesn't say anything. Go have a look by yourself. It doesn't say much. It's just bullet points. And of course, I'm interested to see. I read both of their other books and they're very good. So I'm really curious to see what they come up with this time. Still on the 3rd, we have The Twin by Natasha Preston. Natasha is the author of The Cellar, another book that I read this year and I really enjoyed. This one is a twisty psychological thriller where a girl finds out that her twin sister is trying to push her out of her own life and that she also might be responsible for their mother's death. Wow. Still on the 3rd, we have Havenfall by Sarah Holland. I don't have much information about the story. I just wrote here, it's a safe haven between 4 realms and a girl sworn to protect it at all costs. It's a fantasy novel. I put it here on the list because Sarah Holland is the author of Evermore and Everless, another fantasy series. This is the beginning of another series. For me, it's the typical fantasy story about some kingdom and a girl that needs to protect it. If I had to guess, I would say that she will fall in love with some boy, but then she will choose to protect the throne before falling in love, and then there's all this drama, and then there's all this magic happening, and I'm not interested in reading it, but here it goes in case you are interested. On the 5th of March, we have Hold Back the Tide by Melinda Salzberg. This is also another fantasy. Melinda is the author of A Song of Sorrow, State of Sorrow. I think that's what she wrote. And I think she has other things, but the last series she was working on was the Sorrow series, I believe. This one, I don't have anything about it because I'm not interested in reading it. It's another fantasy and I don't feel like reading fantasy, but I thought you might want to know. Then on the 17th of March, we have Break Your Glass Slippers by Amanda Lovelace. Amanda had a series called Witches Are Some Kind of Magic. 3 books came out. I've read them all. First one, amazing. Second one, don't waste your time. Third one, better but still not great. And this is the first book of another series that she's working on now. And this one is called You Are Your Own Fairy Tale. This first book, called Break Your Glass Slippers, is about overcoming those who don't see your worth, even if that person sometimes is yourself. So another poetry book. I'm gonna read it. I'm curious. I wanna see if this new series is in anything different from the other one or if it's simply the same thing and that's all she can write about. And I don't know. I'm curious. I don't want to be judgmental straight away, so I'm gonna read it and then I'll let you know of my opinion once that happens. Moving on to April. On the 7th of April, we have Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. This is another fantasy book that I'm not interested in reading, but I thought it was interesting because Veronica is the author of the Divergent series, which was a young adult fantasy, and this one is the first time she's publishing an adult fantasy book. So if that's something you like, here you go. On the 28th of April, we have Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Aurora series. The first one, I believe, was called Aurora. This is a tricky word to say. The first one, I believe, was called Aurora Rising. I haven't read it, so I'm not interested in reading this one, but I thought it was interesting as well to share with you. On the 30th of April, so towards the end of the month, we have Loveless by Alice Oseman. Again, the same author. She's the author of Heartstopper, in case you don't know. So next year she will be coming out with 2 books, the graphic novel and this one. This one actually seems very interesting. Will be her 4th novel published besides the Heartstopper series, which are the graphic novels. And this one is the story of a girl that moves to university and she starts discovering herself and her true self, and she feels loveless because she has no interest in boys or girls, and she feels like she's a weirdo, that she should have some interest in that because everyone else does. So it's her self-discovering, and I believe will be about an asexual character, which I think it's very original. There's not many books that have been spoken about asexuality. At least I've never read anything about it, but also I've never really heard any of the people that I follow on BookTube talking about a book about an asexual character. So a person that has no interest in sexual, no sexual interests, you know what I mean? Anyway, so I think it's going to be very interesting, and I definitely will be purchasing this as soon as possible. Then on the same day, 30th of April, we have The Switch by Beth O'Leary. In case you don't know, Beth was the author of The Flat Chair, another book that came out this year I read and loved. This book, The Switch, is about a 20-year-old girl who doesn't like her life, the kind of life she has, and her grandmother, who's like 79 or something. The grandmother is tired of feeling like an old lady. So the 20-year-old girl goes to the grandmother's house. She lives like in a small town where everybody knows each other. She goes there and stays in her grandmother's house, taking care of the house and the animals or something, I don't know, taking care of the things. So basically living her grandmother's life like she thought she would like, while the grandmother decides to move to London and start trying to find love while also trying to experience living a modern life, making her hopefully feel younger. So it's like they swap lives with each other, and then they realize that after all it's not that easy to live someone else's life for saying. I think that's what it says on the synopsis. I'm also very curious, and I'm curious to see what this is. Only read one book by Beth. I don't know if she has anything else published, but I'm curious to read this one. Now, the last month I'm going to speak about is May. On the 7th, we have Burn by Patrick Ness. This book will be a fantasy novel, and it's about revenge, redemption, and dragons. I'm not going to be reading this, but if this is something that you like, there you go. On the 14th of March, we have Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Probably Spanish, I don't know. I never heard of this author, but when I read the synopsis of this book, I was very, very interested. Basically, there's this girl who lives in the Dominican Republic, and I believe she only sees her dad once a year in the summer. So every year she's very excited when he comes to finally visit her. Except this year, I don't know if it mentions how old she is. I don't think so, at least I didn't write it down. But probably she's a teenager. And this year, when she goes to pick up her dad from the airport, she arrives to a crowd of crying people, and they are told that the airplane where the dad was traveling crashed. So he died. And somehow she ends up discovering that her dad had a secret life and another family across the ocean. What for me was even more interesting about this is a dual narrative novel. So I assume both told by this girl and the other girl across the Atlantic, I assume. But it's written in verse, and that really surprised me, and I'm really looking forward to read this. I think it's an interesting concept of secret families. I've never really read anything about that, I think, and the fact that it's written in verse just left me completely curious. I really want to see this, and it only comes out halfway through May, so we have a long way to wait still. And finally, the last book I have on this list for you guys comes out on the 19th of May, and it's called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Susan Collins. Does this ring any bells to you? No? This is the author of The Hunger Games, that I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. It was a trilogy, came out a few years ago. All the books were turned into movies, 3 books turned into 4 movies. And it was amazing. I read the books back then, and then I saw the movies. I love both the books and the movies. And this book is coming out next year. And here's what it says on Goodreads. It's a very little description. No information is given at all, but I'm really curious to read this. Here's what it says. It's set in Panem, so the city, country thing where the world was set, 64 years before the Hunger Games took place, starting on the morning of the reaping of the 10th Hunger Game. I rest my case. I really want to see this. This is excellent. How am I supposed to wait until the end of May to read this? I don't know, but people, this is excellent. I'm so looking forward to read this book. It's quite a big book. It's like 500 something pages, I believe. So quite a big book. I'm really looking forward to it. And it made me start wondering what happened on the 10th Hunger Game. Who was the winner? I don't remember. Because you know how every year there's a winner, and then there was that on the second Hunger Games, there was that special edition that it was the winner of every year. So I'm sure they already told us who the winner of the 10th Hunger Games was. But I don't remember. So please, if you do remember, leave a comment down below telling me that. And let's all suffer together waiting for this book at the end of May. And that was it, guys. These were my 20 books that are coming out in the first half of 2020. I hope you like it. Let me know in the comments if you are looking forward to read any of these, or if there's any others that I didn't mention and that you are looking forward, or that you think I will enjoy reading them. Let me know everything down in the comments, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!